Welcome to PlotLines, where we'll use our over 30 years of experience in real estate communications to uncover the real stories behind real estate. I'm Heather Crowell.
And I'm Britni Acriveau. Dive in with us as we invite guests to break down the ever-changing landscapes of real estate together. All right, welcome back to PlotLines. Today we have Shawn Owen, the founder and CEO of Salt Lending. Shawn, thanks so much for doing this with us today.
Yeah, hello. It's great to be here with you.
Yeah, so let's dive right in. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and Salt Lending.
So I got involved with Bitcoin quite a long time ago in 2011 and just happened to hear about this as I was interested in, at the time, real estate and operations and businesses. And technology was kind of my passion project, and got into gold and a few other things right around 2008 because I was mostly exposed to real estate, hence I think the overlap. And just kind of loved the idea, fell in love as some people did, with this crazy idea of Bitcoin, this digital kind of gold currency. If it could be true, how cool would that be? And went down that rabbit hole very hard. And as it kind of evolved, started to eventually feel like it might actually be something. Really wanted to do something in that space. Hosted some of the first meetups at the time, kind of advocating for Bitcoin and the overlap between that and precious metals and real estate. That turned into meeting some great people, and at a certain point in time, felt like I knew exactly what the missing ingredient was, and kind of went in all in, co-founded this company called Salt. Easy to remember, tastes good on steaks. The real meaning behind it is that it's historically known for the preserver of wealth. That was what humans used for salaries, what we put on meats and goods in order to kind of maintain life and preserve your ability to survive. We thought that was this great idea, with Bitcoin being the savings technology more than anything else, and thought, just wouldn't it be cool if we could get other people to think this crazy idea was worth lending money against, like collateral, like you would with a home equity line of credit or any other kind of property. And have been basically at that ever since, and kind of seen the ups and downs and everything in between. Very excited now these days where we're really starting to hit more, I think, general adoption. Basically, we just borrow and lend against this collateral. I think it's the best collateral humans have ever created. Controversially, maybe a little bit, but up there with real estate and gold and other things that people value, just not with quite the long track record. And that kind of brings us into the current environment.
Wow, interesting. It seems like you were a very early adopter long before we were hearing about it. So I think, as you know, our show is all about breaking down headlines and exploring the reality on the ground, and confirming or debunking the headlines. So there's no shortage of headlines in the alternative space. But a couple that we're seeing are crypto-backed loans are gaining ground, what homeowners need to know, and using real world assets as collateral in DeFi. So would love to hear your take on what we're seeing in the headlines, what the reality is, and if people, the general population is adopting crypto lending, what you're seeing.
Okay, yeah. So in reverse order, I think the real world assets with DeFi being used there is coming, but that's definitely not here today. I think that's something that does still take quite a bit of knowledge and expertise and learning curve to kind of get your mind around, and not for your average person. It takes a bit of tech savviness still to understand what's going on there. Usually would just say stay far away unless you're totally sure you're ready to learn something, and then proceed with caution. Although I'm a huge believer, I've spent lots of time talking about how I think the whole world will be tokenized, which just means this new technology can be adopted in so many different powerful ways. It's a slippery slope, and it's a very deep topic. I feel like I still learn things on a daily basis that you would think I would have learned by now. And on the other side, Bitcoin has definitely found its time. I think a great idea has come, and it's now getting recognized. It's definitely still got a very long way to go for total adoption. But what homeowners, I think, mostly could know or need to know is that there's a ton of people, millions and millions and millions of people, that have believed just the same thing I do and have for decades, plus now, that this is a great form of savings, and if understood the right way and with the right counterparties set up the right way, can be an excellent hedge against inflation. It could be a great augment to real estate. It can be a really good thing in your portfolio. You don't have to go all in like some of us do, but there's definitely a good reason why to know about it, I think, at this point. Anybody that thinks it's just going to go away, I don't believe, of course, and I think they
Yeah.
might be misinformed. But the real rubber meeting the road, I think, is still mostly from people getting their minds around it for a while. It takes a little bit to learn. You definitely we pride ourselves, for example, on lots of disclosure, lots of conversations, lots of human touch and just relationships. The technology is amazing, but it's still technology and we're still humans and it should work for us.
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of level I think people should look for if they're learning about this. Don't ever go after anything that
Yeah.
looks like it's quick money or could make you quick money. It's probably only legitimate if there's real people willing to talk to you about it and you can really
Yeah.
learn and understand. I do think there's a huge segment of this overlap where it can help, especially with some of the problems we see in housing market,
Yeah.
affordability, and just the yields and whatnot in the markets. That real estate's been around for so long, almost like gold. People just kind of know it's there, and then you have something
Yeah.
new. There's a lot of parallels in ways that they go together very nicely.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
So tell us about some of those use cases then for real estate where it makes sense.
The biggest one I think currently exists is that if you're in the business of real estate, own a home or any kind of tangential exposure, let's call it, to real estate as an asset, whether it's cash
Yeah.
flowing or just a commodity that you're holding, I think that you can stake Bitcoin and hold on to it as a way to kind of blend out that. The biggest difference
Okay.
is that the market with Bitcoin is very liquid. It's 24/7. It's the
Yeah.
most depth, and so it can be a
Yeah.
bit. I think it could be a bit intimidating if you look at the price
Yeah.
movement. But if you just apply the same logic that I always thought was great advice with real estate, which is don't buy something unless you're going to hold it for 10 years. A lot
Yeah.
of times real estate investors are great at that. Like they have this long horizon thinking and it kind of is built into the product itself. If
Yeah.
you apply that same level of thinking and long time horizon with Bitcoin, you almost always do extremely well. And then you're not worried about it from a market standpoint. You're not looking at volatility. You're not thinking about any of those components. And so a lot of people benefit from that and just augmenting the exposure to one class to the other. And then if you introduce lending, a lot of people in real estate that I know would get to a certain point where they want to borrow capital to either do improvements or expansions and grow
Yeah.
their business that way. And this is another way where you can kind of have like a teeter-totter of sorts where you can do that on the real estate side and then you can do that on the Bitcoin side. And both of them
Right.
have more of those same tools that work well with each other.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are you seeing people use crypto backed loans to purchase real estate or,
Yes.
construction capital, that type of thing?
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. So
Okay.
it's still an underserved market, I would say. Like you can't just
Mhm.
go to Chase Manhattan or any other large bank that you might know of and get one of these loans. Although I think that's coming. You cannot today. And
Yeah.
so there's
Yeah.
still this pain point where if somebody starts to accumulate wealth in Bitcoin and they had real estate, vice versa, at some point you kind of need the tools that you'd expect out of banking. And you need the ability to go collateralize this
Yeah.
and put a security interest into it and leverage it to some degree. And the ability to then do that, we see a lot of people use the proceeds to go buy cash flowing properties, for example, and offset
Okay.
the interest that they might pay on the loan or
Mm.
diversify and say, I'm so
Okay.
wealthy in one of these that I need some exposure the other way. With Bitcoiners for a long time, they couldn't really get banked. And so they needed some way to get to their real estate. What we also see is a lot of people in real estate, they hit a certain point where there's lots of great deals, but they cannot participate anymore because they're illiquid and they just,
Right.
the
Right.
time is so much different, right? On something that's 24/7 versus the longer time closes that you get in a real estate transaction.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
closes take longer.
Makes sense.
For sure. Yeah.
Tell us about sort of the regulation compliance side of this. Obviously, we know that people have their concerns. What are some things to consider here?
So definitely consider that you do your due diligence with anything, that you know
Yeah.
both what it is you're doing and that you feel confident
Mhm.
with it. Otherwise, don't do it. Never giving financial advice per se, but definitely knowing that there's just good general advice when it comes to security. There's far too many AI spoofs and problems with scams and
Mhm.
things like this. So
Mhm.
like,
Yeah.
just apply that rigor of if it doesn't seem quite right and or if it feels a bit abrupt or panicky or limited time offer, just
Yeah.
avoid it. Ask for some credentials, think about it. Nobody should ever be compelled to have to do anything. The biggest issues I've seen over all of the 15 years has been not Bitcoin, and it's not been the technology, and it's not been the good actors, and it's not been the people that are building or enthusiasts.
Yeah.
It's been bad elements that you find everywhere that try to
Yeah.
exploit
Yeah.
situations. And it's no different than somebody gets booked off of a traffic arrest, and then there's a scammer calling their family members trying
Sure.
to figure out how to exploit them,
Yeah.
right? So you're going to see
Yeah.
that same kind of bad actor behavior, unfortunately. It is getting much better these days with, I think the policy changes are pushing a lot more of a, let's figure this out here. Let's not run it offshore. Let's do
Right.
it right. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, it's going to be based off of where you're at. So we have all the different lending licenses, for example, and we have the MSBs, and we have FinCEN, and we have AML, and all the different
Yeah.
overlaps. And if anything, I'd say crypto is usually overregulated. So if it doesn't have some sense of that, it's probably not legitimate, and or you're
Okay.
not ready for it, or you just have to watch out. Buyer,
Okay.
be
Good to know.
careful.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So you've been at this, you started Salt in, I think, 2016, which is, like I said, pretty early adoption. You've seen a lot of different cycles. How are expectations and behaviors of borrowers now relative to different cycles that we've been through?
So we've definitely seen everything from exuberance. I think in 2017, 18, there was a bit of a false start where the concept of tokenization really got a bad run. Although I'm a big believer that it has huge potential that is untapped.
Yeah.
This kind of wave of narrative of ICOs came around, and it really kind of set the industry back in a ways, I think. And there were less companies then. There've been some great companies all along, and you can see if they've been around a very long time, they're probably standing the test of time. Especially, I'm speaking from a U.S. perspective. If you can go look up the founders, and you can see where they were funded, and you can go through the whole history. That we had, I think, a really false start, bad situation with bad actors. Most people would notice FTX in 20.
Yep.
It was just bad. I mean, and again, it's not the technology, it's not the people, and it's not the good actors. It was fraud, and it was no different than Bernie Madoff or any other kind of just garbage.
Yep.
It was total fraud, and unfortunately, for a lot of people, myself included, the baby went out with the bathwater. So anything crypto in the Biden administration, anything lending specifically, was just bad news, and kind of had to prove that it wasn't FTX. However, that has really cleaned itself out. Probably took a little longer than most people want, but you have a totally different regime change. You have totally different policies. You see a lot of very smart people kind of stepping in and filling those roles. You see a lot more institutions. You see a lot more good companies being formed, a lot of stuff coming on shore. So we're seeing another tide. Now, from the borrower's perspective, it's about the same. It's literally the same value proposition. Nothing's really changed. If you believe Bitcoin will be here a long time, then it means you have a preference for wanting to save something for the future. If you believe the future is better than today, then you are looking forward to something and you want to hold on to it.
Yeah.
And that's the same as real estate. That's where I think there's so many parallels here to the real estate markets. If you see those, then well, then there has to be some form of banking infrastructure, from credit to debit to all the other tools built around this. And there's still a long way to go for that. So I think the sentiment is much better, cautiously optimistic. I think a lot of people are still cautious for good reasons. And I hope that over time, people will really just integrate the right players the right way, so we never have another FTX ever.
Yeah.
Right. Which is like, we don't want another 28, right? We don't ever want another banking meltdown like that. We did that.
Yeah.
It was no fun. We should never do that again.
Agree.
Okay. Well, you've mentioned throughout our conversation some misconceptions. Any others that we haven't hit on yet?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many. So I generally don't like most things. So I'm just going to be on the record. I come with the bias that I don't think it's very hard, let me say it this way, to outpace Bitcoin as an investment thesis. It's kind of like if you're already doing good and you had a great real estate, you own part of Manhattan and it's doing great and you've had it forever. Why would you just start speculating out in the middle of North Dakota or something? It's probably not a good idea. And so I think that risk curve is very true with crypto, especially its emerging markets. And so you see a lot of shiny objects. You see a lot of allure. You see a lot of people saying stuff like, oh, this is going to be the next Bitcoin or whatever. And a lot of times it's just based in either fallacy, economic, feeling FOMO, like people feel like they missed
Yeah.
out. So they're trying to get ahead of that curve. And that's a very like the fiat thinking problem where you're
Yeah.
feel like we all feel like you have to keep up with inflation, you have to keep up with other people who are
Yeah.
speculating, you have to be the next VC. I don't think any of that is good. I don't think any of that is good or wholesome or healthy. It's way better to just get back to saving and knowing that you have something to look forward to and
Yeah.
that your
Yeah.
home is going to be there a long time or your building's going to be there a long time or Bitcoin's going to be there a long time. So I think the biggest misconception is just that there's all this other stuff that's like Bitcoin. There are a lot of other things that are very different and and I appreciate them. And I think it's very good that we have them. I think it's good that we have Ethereum and Solana and other types of networks that are proving out on on this thesis of decentralization and technology. But, it's just too easy for people to fall into some kind of misconception. So the easiest test is just for now, if it's not Bitcoin, just don't, because you probably don't know enough. And
Yeah.
if you do know enough, then you know that the answer, and you don't need me to say this, right? And so you'll know when the time comes when it's right. But I would treat it more like going to Vegas and gambling. It's fun. Going to Starbucks, grabbing a nice coffee. I love that too. But like you are departing with your money, and you're probably not going to get it back. So you better
Right,
enjoy
right,
the
right, right.
experience of learning.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Um, so there's a lot of different views out there on, digital assets. What are you seeing in terms of adoption from institutions versus individuals? Is one more likely than the other to adopt that you're
We
seeing?
have I think like 50 million people as a stat right now of people
Wow.
who own crypto of some sort in
That's a lot.
America. That's a lot. And I think,
That's a lot.
unfortunately, a lot of that is probably that latter group that I just spoke about, which are trying to feel like they're left out. And so they're catching on,
Yeah.
buying just whatever.
Yep. Yep.
But, all roads lead back to a good education and learning curve. And some, I think all boats rise with the tides, the reality that happens. I do think there's a few chains that are probably going to make it quite a long time, and if not, just become foundational to the world because they add value, and they have so much writing on them now that it just becomes very sticky, kind of like how the internet just is what it is. Even if it's not the best protocol, we're going to keep using it because it works. That I think that's very true with these networks.
Yeah.
The narrative is no doubt 100% right now from the president to many of the leaders in the world down in the big companies about Bitcoin as a reserve asset and as a treasury. Just getting onto the balance sheet and knowing that everybody's got a protocol that works where you can get fair accounting, you can service it, you can understand how to build products around it. That's a big milestone. And I think that's still
Yeah.
where we're at. Usually what happens is once that has kind of flushed itself out with new adoption, then you see everybody kind of come in from either a retail angle
Right.
or other types of currencies and chains, like the Solanas and the Ethereums and you go down the list, Ripple,
Yeah.
right? You see a lot of that. And so I think you'll see both of that. I think that's where we're at on both fronts. It's just that from our point of view, right? And I think we have a decent view into the market. Bitcoin is 90% of the collateral. Everything else has its place for sure, but it's not quite in the same category. So when it comes for people putting it on their balance sheet, unless you're specifically building a fund or doing something very niche there where you're going in on the deep end, it's
Yeah.
probably back to that same. We're at the point where Bitcoin itself is becoming adopted, but it's still got a long way to go. And
Yeah.
the learning curve from there, I think, just will take care of itself, right? Like real estate's going to get put on a blockchain for sure. There are some examples that are very good, and there's a lot of benefit to it, but it's not mass adopted right now. We've
Okay.
had some false starts with, say, like JPEGs and what was it, the meme coins? That was the latest one. Those kind of prove new technology, but they're very hypey, and
Yeah.
it's kind of like shiny object. And then behind it, you see, okay, 4 or 5 years from now, that's what's really coming.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Well, you've told us a little bit about how SALT does things differently, but to sort of start to round us out here, what are some ways that you sort of set yourselves apart and, build that trust and security and help reduce risk and things like that for your clients?
So mostly I'd say just because we did have the first mover advantage when we launched from ideation 2015 to
Yeah.
build out, we've had the luxury of being able to hold on to that as long as we can. And so what we have done is to continue to say, how do we innovate and know where the puck is going. What can we do to be the best in class for optionality and service for customers? We're not trying to be the biggest overnight. We're not trying to do something crazy like scale too fast. We're not taking
Right.
that kind of Amazon model or break stuff model. We just know that it's people's life savings and it really matters. And so you have to take it very seriously and just build appropriately. But we have the most products that with the most optionality, mostly around custody management and different services we've created so that you know that one way or another you can set the preferences the way that you need it. You're fully
Okay.
disclosed and you can take the time to be informed and speak to people.
Yeah.
I think we're the first also to marry a product with real estate specifically, which I was interested in, your audience, and you guys have a great show. So
Yeah.
the ability to kind of create a package between a real estate investor on the lending side, all the way through the stack of mezzanine and all the parts that make that happen to title
Yeah.
closing, the purchaser who just needs to develop and keep building new sites and has the cash flow, but they need the ability to get there on
Yeah.
the debt. And then the Bitcoiner who's looking to just support good investments, but wants yield and preferably would like additional Bitcoin over time, but may need to borrow against it. It makes for some really great products. And I think that we have the lead there, that we set ourselves apart. But mostly it's just staying ahead of being able to keep building services and products around Bitcoin saving
Yeah.
more than anything. And knowing, we haven't really changed our model. So we've had a long time now to just keep on perfecting that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've been leading the way, right?
Yep.
Looking ahead 12 to 24 months, what do you see in the future as like some of the products that could be out there, or what crypto users could be thinking about? What should they be thinking about, or crypto investors and that sort
Yeah,
of
from
thing?
the adoption where we're at, I think it's very clear that there's still a lot of institutional, traditional products that people expect if you go to a bank and or a neobank. In the neobanking kind of, call it PayPal and Zelle and the rest of these cash apps, right?
Yeah.
They disrupt because there's a pain point. Saying it's similar in what we see. We see a pain point where, I don't like it. I don't like having to wait over the weekend to get a wire. I don't want to pay a bunch of money and have to sit there and fill out paperwork.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's very frustrating, right? And so just knowing that the world can be programmable, transparent, provably fair, accessible, knowing that the world is heading in that direction and leaning into that, knowing that, the just shenanigans don't have to be there and we can have a much better system. It doesn't mean the current system didn't get us here. And it doesn't mean I'm throwing shade or anything on anybody that built that, because we're here because of that in large part.
Yeah.
But you can see if it doesn't exist yet on Bitcoin or crypto, it's going to. I believe that firmly, that you're going to see credit cards, debit cards, home equity mixtures, all the investment products, different types of treasury solutions, buy, sell, the rest of it, retirement accounts, money markets, insurance. There's so much still to build that it's coming, but we're not there. And so you can kind of look out and see, where are we at? If we still don't have banking 24 hours on the weekend and you're still paying exorbitant fees, or if you could still get your bank account shut off for no good reason, we're not there yet. So we got more to build.
Yeah.
And I definitely think the future is bright. It just takes a long time to keep persistent and look at what exists today and how we can build a better version of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Seems like we're on the way.
We are on the way.
All right,
Always
Shawn.
wanted to go faster, but it takes time.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah. All right. Well, we started the conversation asking you sort of about headlines and your take on things. We always end our show with giving our guests the opportunity to write their own headlines. So if you were given that chance to write about crypto, particularly as it relates to real estate, perhaps, what would that look like?
Stake Bitcoin, the newest pristine collateral asset to mankind, with real estate, the oldest known, best at performing asset of mankind, for a brighter future.
I love it. It gives the
It's like the subheads are weaved in.
Yeah.
There you go.
Very good.
Trying
Thanks
to
so much,
optimize for
Shawn.
SEO and AI.
There you go.
and
There
whatever
you
else.
go.
Totally
All the
optimized.
keywords are in there. Thank you.
Thanks so much for doing this with us. We appreciate it.
This has been awesome. Thank you both.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Very
it.
insightful. Thank you. All right. So, crazy enough, we just wrapped up my last episode of PlotLines, because I'm going to be moving on, for those of you who don't know, but I will still stay tangentially involved and be watching. It's been so fun doing this out of nowhere, and becoming a podcast co-host. So,
I know. Just like a concept that we took and here we are.
Ran with it, and we've had so many great
Yeah.
guests, and I've
Yeah.
learned a lot. We just learned a ton today.
Yeah, right. We can
so
keep learning.
yeah, it's been so fun, and I think
Yeah.
thank you for doing it
Yeah,
with me,
yeah.
and thank you to everyone who's kind of watched and played along. And I think
Yeah.
PlotLines will continue, so I'll continue to be a fan.
Yeah, we'll miss
Um,
you, Heather. Thanks for everything.
Thanks.
And
Yeah.
it's been really good. But
Yeah.
we know you'll continue to watch.
Yeah, yeah,
You're
yeah.
not stepping away. Maybe come in as
Maybe
a guest.
maybe I will
every
be
now
a
and
guest.
again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You never know.
All right.
All
Well,
right.
stay tuned for what's next for PlotLines, and we'll miss you, Heather.
Oh, thank you.
This podcast is a production of Gregory. If you enjoyed our discussion, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts